On there. Lovely. So this morning we're doing our shouldery type functional movement routine. So you will want to have a sturdy book. So examples of a sturdy book that I can find. The Good Pub Guide. Remember those pubs? 2019. That's quite a good weight for a paperback. And Bill Bryson's The Body. So one or the other. Having a book to hand will be quite handy for one of the things that we're going to be playing around with in a minute. But before that, we're going to get started by just tuning into where our bodies are today. And a really good way to do that, as I always say, is starting with the feet. So finding that connection with the ground. Start to spread the feet, lift the toes, spread them as wide as we can. And then maybe we can start to rock forwards and then back. Seeing if we can roll across the soles of the feet. She's a poet and she didn't know it. Easing through and maybe start to come out to the side. So imagining that we're trying to get every single little nook and cranny on the sole of the foot in contact with the ground. Really spreading them wide. And particularly in the morning, this is a really good way to wake up the body. There's a piece of fascia underneath the foot that starts at the bottom of the foot and then wraps all the way up the backs of the legs, over the back of the body and actually finishes on the forehead. So just by moving into the soles of the feet, we start to get a lot more loosening into the whole back line of the body. So a really good way just to kind of ease in. So if you're having your cup of tea or making a cup of tea in the morning and just waiting for the kettle to boil, channeling a little bit of your inner Elvis can be a really good way to just unstick into the body, take some of that stiffness away. And then we can start to roll up onto the balls of the feet and maybe start to lift the arms. And then how low can you go? Coming down. Doesn't matter how low we get. Maybe here, maybe a little bit further. Lovely guys, really nice. And then coming maybe all the way down. Wherever we get to, we've got to come back up, haven't we? So maybe with control, lifting all the way back up, lovely. And then back onto the soles of the feet. Bringing the left foot behind and the left arm reaches over. Nice side stretch into the side of the body. And then over to the other side. So right foot crossing over, lovely. Do one more on each side. And if we're having a day where we're feeling quite low energy, these sorts of lateral movements into the body are particularly energizing as well. Do one more on each side. Just gently, all the way through, tips of the fingers down into the heel. Lovely. And then we'll move through to some spinal articulation. So dropping the chin to the chest, shoulders start to round, and then soften the knees. We're going to roll all the way down, using gravity to draw the body as far down as is comfortable. That'll vary for all of us. Once we've got to the bottom, keeping the chin tucked in, pressing down through the big toe to roll all the way back up. So we're seeing if we can get every single vertebra to move independently. Now at the moment it might just be the idea of that happening. When we get to the top, chin to the chest, rolling down. Slow, steady, even movement. And bend the knees as much as we want to here. And then once we get to the bottom, we're going to find our way to seated in as dignified or undignified a way as you wish. Once we're in seated, we can roll down to lying on the back. So shift into the shoulders, shift into the hips. See if we can place the spine onto the mat with as much space as possible. And keeping the knees bent, soles of the feet onto the floor, and just let the knees drop in towards the center. So we're going to interlace the hands, bring them to rest completely under the head. Take a deep breath in here. And on the out breath, elbows come together. We're just lifting chin to the chest. So we're not doing a crunch, just using the hands to lift the head. Inhaling, elbows come wide, head comes down. And exhaling, chin to the chest. So maybe we start to feel this into the back of the neck, maybe into the tops of the shoulders, maybe even between the shoulder blades. So we start to notice all these little ripple effects in the body. Everything's connected. All these little chain reactions always happening. We just don't stop to notice. Lovely. Making this one the last one, no rush. And then releasing the hands. And we're going to let the legs fall to the side. So walking the feet out to the width of the mat rather than hip width. Let the knees drop to one side and then inhaling through center as they drop through to the other. So we start to feel that weight shift across the lower back and across the soles of the feet. So rather than window wiping the knees as fast as we can, we're using this movement to release into the soft tissue in the hips, gently waking up, finding that sense of ease, softening, unsticking. Lovely. And then we're going to bring the feet in closer towards the sit bones as we arch into the lower back. So as we arch, it's almost as if we want to slide a hand underneath the lower back. We're just lifting the lower back, so the hips and the shoulders staying on the floor, and then exhaling to flatten. So pointing tailbone down, breathing into arch, exhaling to flatten. So we're just playing with that little tilt into the pelvis and working at the pace of your own breath here. And then next time we inhale and arch, exhale to flatten, keep that tuck of the pelvis, press into the feet as we lift the hips high. So by keeping that tuck of the tailbone, we're using the glutes rather than just hinging through the lower back. As we exhale, placing every single vertebra down one at a time, inhaling at the bottom to arch, exhaling to flatten, rolling through one vertebra at a time. Lovely. And then placing every single one down. So we're getting that idea of the spine rippling. So rather than just hinging into the shoulders, hinging into the hips, remembering all of those lovely little vertebrae in between as well. Lovely. One more time here. Use the glutes, firing up to lift. And then bringing both legs out straight, both arms above the head, reaching the right side away, toes away from the fingers, and then shifting through to the other side. Lovely. So we might notice a slight tilt into the pelvis laterally to the side as we're doing this. Doing one more on each side. And then when you're ready, knees into the chest, we can start to circle into the knees. Notice how as we draw the knees close, we flatten into the lower back as we bring the knees away. There's a slight arching. So all these things are constantly happening in our bodies. We just don't pay attention to them, or we don't know to. So just noticing all those little ripple effects. Lovely. From here, we can either bring the knees to the side and press up into seated, or we can rock and roll up and down the back of the body. If we're doing this, it's quite nice to almost use this as a bit of a massage all the way along the back of the spine. Lovely. And when you're ready, soles of the feet coming onto the floor. Nice. So we're going to breathe in and lift up, and on the out breath, twisting around, doesn't matter which side. Breathing in to lift up and exhaling to twist. Not going as far as we possibly can, just exploring that idea of spinal rotation, sending the spine in different directions. Lovely. Last one. And then on the next in-breath, right hand comes down, left arm lifts. Rather than trying to get down as low as we can, we're pressing down into that bottom arm. Left ribs coming up towards the sky, and then we're shifting through to the other side. So almost pressing down to lift. Lovely. One more time on each side. Oh, feels so good, right? And then making our way onto all fours. So hands underneath, hands spread wide, knees under the hips, and we can maybe just start to sway gently side to side, maybe forwards and backwards. If you want to, perhaps start to circle here. So we're releasing into the soft tissue around the wrists now. We give so much attention to the rest of the body. We forget about our wrists. We come to the yoga mat and then suddenly expect to be able to hold downward facing dog or plank or any of these shapes, having not spent any time past the end of 18 months in this sort of shape. Lovely. We're going to turn fingers out to the side, so now the wrists are facing towards one another. Lovely. And then forwards, backwards, side to side, or maybe circling. Lovely, you choose. Option to do one last rotation. So now the thumbs point out. fingers towards the knees, and maybe start to bring the knees in closer if it feels strong across the front of the wrists. Again, side to side, forwards, backwards, or gently circling. Lovely. And then we can turn the wrist back towards the top of the mat. So we're going to tune back into the lower back. And so we're not doing cat-cow just yet. We're keeping the ribs where they are. And then start to lift the tailbone, exhaling to tuck. So it's a tiny, tiny movement just into the pelvis. Exactly the same as what we were doing just now when we were lying down. Inhale to arch, exhale to flatten. And then start to let that movement travel up as we draw the heart through. And exhaling, scooping up the belly, getting every single vertebra to join in, head comes down, breathing in to reverse that ripple. So again, seeing if rather than hinging in between the shoulders and the hips, seeing if we can get every single little vertebra to join in here. We can bring the right knee into the nose, right leg comes out behind, maybe left elbow comes to the knee, left arm coming out. Lovely. Option, so this is one option. Another option is to start to bring the legs and the arms out to the side. So in, breathing out to come out and then out to the side. Lovely. Just an option to explore. And then when you're ready, toes together at the back of the mat, knees wide, and start to send the sit bones back, coming into a child's pose. And from here, we're going to roll through onto the forearms, pressing into the heart to lift, and exhaling to round back. Breathing in to lift. Lovely. Breathing out, easing back. We'll do one more here next time that we lift. Knees coming back underneath the hips and circling the hips in both directions. Lovely. Now we'll do the same on the other side. So first, finding that ripple. Tuck the tailbone, let that movement travel up. Remember the middle of the back into the rib cage, head comes down, and then reversing that ripple. Lovely. Tucking the tailbone, scooping the belly, and breathing in. And then we can start to bring that left knee into the nose. Left leg comes out if we wish. Maybe the right elbow joins in, right arm coming out. Lovely. Option to bring that movement out to the side and then back and then in. Lovely. And then next time that we breathe in, toes together, knees wide, sit bones back, rolling onto the forearms. Exhale back. Lovely. Breathing in and breathing out. And then slowly making our way back into all fours. We're going to tuck the toes under and bring the knees to a hopper. And then start to press into the hands. So keep the knees bent, shake the head no, nod the head yes. And then maybe start to drop the right heel down, bending the right knee. Left heel drops down, left knee bends. So we start to walk the dog, releasing into the calves, into the backs of the legs. And then when you're ready, stepping or walking to the top of the mat as we rise with the flat back, exhaling to fold. Hands coming onto the knees, so keep the knees bent as we lift the chest. And we'll start to move through that kind of spinal articulation here. So breathing in as we draw the heart through, stick the tailbone out, exhaling to round. Lovely. Breathing in, tailbone comes out, exhaling. And maybe option to start to straighten the legs as we stick the tailbone out. So that makes it into a hamstringy type movement as well. Lovely. So next time that we exhale, we're going to make our way all the way up to standing. So start to circle into the shoulders, finding that release into the back of the body. And then we're going to start to warm up the body. So we'll come through some sun salutes. So standing at the top of the mat, breathing in, lifting the gaze, hands to the sky. And on the out breath, lifting up and out of the pelvis to hinge. Come to wherever we come to. We can soften the knees as well. Breathing in to lift halfway. Hands down, feet back, as we come into another downward facing dog. And again, we can shake the head no, we can nod the head yes. Hands are about shoulder width apart, feet are about hip distance apart. If it feels like we're bunching up into the shoulders, no space between the neck and the ears, then we can bring the hands a little bit wider. So depending on where the space is in your own body, finding where feels right. And then when you're ready, we can step or walk to the top of the mat and hang down. We can bend into the knees, find opposite elbows and start to maybe sway side to side. For some of us, it'll feel nice to bounce up and down. So much of this depends on how you've slept, how your chair is set up, how heavy your bag is, how heavy your children are, any injuries or conditions that you've had in the past. So really, this is just movement. So find where feels good for you, that kind of release to gravity, whatever shape or movement or speed that happens to be. And then we can release the hands and start to roll up the back of the body again. Keep the knees soft, bend them as much as we want to. One vertebra at a time, restacking, rebuilding the spine. Ah, rolling the shoulders at the top, lovely. And I'm gonna have to, there's a point in the day where it looks like I'm being beamed up into space because the sun starts to come through the window. Such a shame to block it out, but oh, that's better, isn't it? No alien abductions today. So breathing in to lift the gaze, exhaling, hinging from the hips to come down. Breathing in to lift halfway, hands down, feet back, downward dog. Again, pedaling through the legs. So from here, we might want to lift up the heels, bend the knees, and point the knees to one direction. So we start to turn it into a lateral stretch into the sides of the ribs, pivoting on the feet to come through side to side if you wish. Or it might feel good just to be pedaling out the legs, you choose. Just options to explore. And then when you're ready, we can step or walk to the top of the mat, rise with a flat back, hands to the shins, exhaling to fold. Either rolling through the spine or hinging from the hips, bringing the arms all the way up, you choose. And then hands coming back down by the side. Bending into the knees, hands sweep along the earth. So we come into our chair pose, lovely. So from here, notice what's happened in the hips. There can be a tendency to either stick the bum out or tuck it under here. See if we can find that sweet spot, lovely. And then hands coming down, forward fold. Left foot steps back, left knee down, left hand down, and the right arm lifts, lovely. Both hands down on the in-breath, and then the left arm lifts. Breathing in, both hands down, exhaling to the first side, lovely. Doing one more here, over to the other side. And then hands down, tuck that back foot under as we scoop up that right knee and come back into downward facing dog. So from here, the right leg lifts, the left knee comes down. It sounds wrong, but it's right. And then the right foot steps through and we rise. So this is kind of classic functional movement rather than yoga. Yoga would kind of send us into this kind of shape. We get the same reaction in the body by tucking the tailbone under and having that lengthening up. Lovely. We're going to twist to one side and then all the way through center, coming through to the other. And then we can option to lift that back foot for the second round. And we keep the back heel lifted so we've got space in the front of that left hip. When we've finished, hands come down, scooping right foot away and then sending sit bones high, downward facing dog. And again, maybe we pedal out the legs or maybe we lift the heels and then bending through to one side and then the other to find that lateral stretch. Lovely. From here, we're going to step, walk, or maybe jump to the top of the mat, rise with a flat back, exhaling to fold. Bending into the knees, coming into our chair pose. Lovely. Hands parallel to the ears. And if it feels like we're kind of bunching up into the shoulders, we can bring the arms wider. Kind of get stuck with some of these shapes sometimes. Where can I get that sense of space into my body, even here? and then pressing down to lift. So we'll do one more on the other side. Bending into the knees, sit bones coming low, lovely chair pose. And then folding on the out breath. This time it's the right leg that steps back, right knee down, right hand down, as the left arm lifts. And moving through to the other side, as the right arm lifts. Doing one more on each side. Seeing if we can move into the shoulders and the ribs rather than shifting the weight side to side in the hips. Hands come down, right foot tucks under, hugging in, left knee, sending it up, downward facing dog. Pedaling to the legs, shaking the head no, nodding the head yes. And then it's the left leg that lifts, it's the right knee that comes down, and it's the left leg that steps through. And we rise, so rather than trying to come forwards, we lift up. Tuck the tailbone down, so you start to feel that sensation across the front of the right hip. And we can twist, rotating, breathing into lift, rotating to the other side. Option for the second round to lift that back knee to turn it into a balance, if you wish. Lovely, and then windmilling the hands down, hugging right left knee in this time, and lifting back up into downward facing dog. And from here, again, moving or finding stillness, always the option to find child's pose, so knees down, either knees wide, toes together, or knees in together, to find a resting pose at any point, or any other shape that feels comfortable. This is not a game of Esther says or Simon says or anything like that. And then when you're ready, we can step or walk or jump to the top of the mat, rise with a flat back, exhaling to fold. Bend into the knees, arms parallel to the ears, and then hands back through. Lovely. So we should be feeling a little bit warmer now, which means it's the perfect time to get our books. So basically we're looking for a book that's got a little bit of weight to it, not something that's just going to kind of go flying off. So that's why a kind of chunky paperback or a hardback, quite good options. So before we get into that, we're going to explore the directions of the shoulders. So comfortable standing, doesn't matter where the feet are, but seeing if we can really lift the toes, spread them wide, and feel that connection with the ground. Through that connection, we then start to grow tall. So feel that movement traveling up the spine, lifting, 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 crown of the head lifts. So we're active here, nice and engaged. This traditionally in yoga would be our mountain pose. So essentially just standing, but very, very active and supported, stable. So from here, our shoulders can go up, so bringing them up to the ears, and then dropping them back to neutral, and then give them a little bit of a press down. So there's a tiny little bit that they can move down after that, lovely. Breathing in to lift up, returning back to neutral, and then that tiny fractional little movement just down a little bit, lovely. We'll do one more there. So whilst this is all very nice stuff, there is a method in the madness. We're warming up into those little tiny little muscles into the shoulders, as well as me wittering on about the different directions that they can go in. And then we can bring them up. Arms can come up and arms can come down, maybe coming back a little bit as well. And this movement will vary for all of us. So it doesn't make it any better or worse depending on where we come to. Lovely. Breathing in to lift up and exhaling to come down. And they're also capable of coming out to the sides and up. So how does this feel different? So stay curious in your own body. For me, that moves it from a sensation in the tops of the arms onto something that's happening on the back of my body. We think of the shoulders, I think a lot, in part due to the sun, head, shoulders, knees and toes, as these things that kind of hang out here. Actually, our shoulders are these incredible things that kind of wing onto the back of the body. Lovely. And they can also come out to the side, and we can bring the thumbs down and then bring the thumbs back as far as is comfortable. Now, while we're moving the hands here, feel how this movement actually comes from the shoulders. You feel that kind of traveling into the back of the body. And we can do one on one side, one on the other. Oh, my shoulders are really crunchy this morning. Lovely. And remember that that crunchiness isn't necessarily a warning sign. So sometimes we kind of have these feelings and go, oh no. It's just movement of the bones against the soft tissue, the ligaments, the tendons, into the sockets, perhaps in a way that we haven't moved them day to day. And then we can bring one up and one down. Lovely. All of these different shapes and movements and directions that are available to us. So the shoulder joint is a ball and socket joint, so that we can bring hands onto the shoulders and start to circle around here. So they're capable, it's a joint that's capable of the biggest range of movement in the body. The hips are also a ball and socket joint, but the way that the top of the bone of the thigh fits in is a lot deeper than the shoulder. It's a lot more of a shallow joint in the shoulder. So there's so many different ranges of movement that are available to us in the shoulder. So let's start to explore that, shall we, with our books. Choosing a book. I've also done this with shoes as well when I was in a studio and we didn't have any books to hand. So something that's got kind of a decent weight to it, something that's not going to just kind of go flying off. And if we're holding a book or whatever we're holding, seeing if we can resist the urge to grip on, seeing if we can have the hand flat rather than gripping onto the sides. And we're going to momentarily glue that elbow into the waist and start to send it across the body and then out to the side. So this is almost like one of those Pilates moves, you know, the kind of the waiter one. That's a Pilates move there. So we're aware of where that movement travels into the body. For me, I feel that into the outer edge of that shoulder here, and then into the back of the body at the furthest point as well. Lovely. And then once we've got this, we can start to see if we can move the hips out of the way as we draw a circle. So knowing that with each point that we start to introduce a new move or a variation, there's a point where the brain goes, what are you doing? That's completely natural. That's how our brains deal with change, whether it is change in the world, change in our world, or change in the movement that we're doing in a functional movement or sports yoga session. Lovely. So notice how probably you're not having to think quite so much about that now. Already, those neural pathways have caught up and your brain has gone, oh, guys, I've got it. Don't worry. And you're not having to concentrate in quite the same way. So that's the perfect time to add in another layer. So we've got a circle. Let's add another circle at the top. So starting to make a figure of 8 here. To begin with, again, you might need to do it slowly. Let the head catch up with where the body's got to. And if you find that your book takes flight, then again, knowing that that's completely normal as well. The sad truth is I have done this a lot of times, and so I have got that training into my brain, but equally I still throw books across my living room. Lovely. And then next time that we come to the top, we're going to pause there and we're going to turn that movement back in the opposite direction. So making circles in the other direction. And whilst this is a very nice thing to do, Esther, lovely, it's also to be able to do this, we're getting pretty much full range of movement into the shoulder joint. So if we're feeling really stiff or kind of tight, or if the weather's been cold, or if we've had bad news and we're kind of hunching up into the shoulders, this is a really good one to encourage healthy range of movement into the shoulder joint. Lovely. And now we've got some options to play with. So bearing in mind that I use the word options rather than Esther says. So we can drop the right, if we've got the book in the right hand, we can drop the right knee. So whichever side we're working on, that same side can come down. Lovely. And then maybe the other knee drops. And then we can start to bring the sit bones down. And it's basically a game of how low can we go. So making our way as far down or as is comfortable. Comfortable being a little bit of an abstract term here. Lovely. And then wherever we've got to, making our way back up. So using the opposite leg to come up first, we've still got lots of space to move here and then all the way back up to standing. Awesome. Lovely, guys. So for a moment, just placing your book out of the way, find that connection back in with the ground. Close the eyes or soften the gaze. And just notice, how do I feel on one side compared to the other? So we can focus on the crown of the head, into the shoulders, into the ribs, the hips, into the knee, down into the sole of the foot on the side that we've been working on. Noticing feedback from the body, from the breath, and from the thoughts. It's all connected. Lovely. And then when you're ready, we'll come through to the other side. So should be feeling a little bit more spacious on one side. So again, this time opposite elbow into the ribs or into the waist, bringing it out to the side and then back into the belly, easing through. Lovely. And just think of the possibilities. Dinner parties, bring in a cup of tea. Once we nail this, the opportunities are endless. Lovely. And then we can start to let the hips come out of the way. So start to draw circles. And again, take your time here. There's no rush. It's not about how quickly can I do this. The slower we go, the more we know. The more we start to notice all those little chain reactions into the body, and our body, we can work with it rather than against it. Noticing if we're starting to grip onto the sides, seeing if we can keep the hand flat, nice flat palm, lovely. And then when you're ready, we can start to layer it up. So letting that movement coming all the way up into another circle at the top. So we're starting to make a figure of 8 or that infinity sign. Lovely. And we don't need to have the arms straight. Just let that natural, she says natural, but it does kind of start to become a natural movement, start to come in. And then next time that we're at the top, no rush. Pausing there. And then we're going to reverse that circle. So it takes it, for me, through my brain, I have to think a little bit harder. Right, what direction am I going now? So maybe you find the same, maybe not. Just making your way around the other way. And I definitely find that there's one way that feels more natural than the other. And that's often the way that I start with, rather than the way that I have to turn around into. Lovely. Now, options to layer it up. So if we're going to bend the knee, then we do it on the same side as the one that we're moving. We can come down onto one knee. So that way we've still got lots of space to draw through. And then we can bring that right knee down, maybe, opposite knee down. And maybe start to sit back. Lovely. Wherever we've got to, noticing how we feel in the body. Feedback that we're getting in, we can start to draw back up, so the opposite knee up first. If you've still got your book, amazing, or your shoe or whatever you're using. And then gently lifting back up to standing, lovely. So, bring the book down. And again, closing the eyes, softening the gaze. What feedback am I getting from my body? Scanning down the left side of the body now, the side that you've been working on. So crown of the head into the shoulder, into the ribs, the hip, the knee, all the way down into the sole of the foot. And then we can start to circle around into the shoulders, and chin drops down to the chest, rolling through the back of the body, making our way down to seated. So from here, we're going to roll onto the front of the body and do some last shoulder movements. So we want to have the ribs onto the ground, forearms out in front of us, and to the point where, this will vary for all of us, the point where the lower ribs stay fixed onto the ground, but we've got the elbows in as close as we can without them starting to lift up. So that'll vary depending on the length of our arm bones. We're going to press down into the forearms and start to drag them back as we draw the heart through, and then exhaling to soften down. Breathing in, dragging the forearms back towards us, although because they're fixed on the ground, the movement travels between the shoulder blades. And then exhaling down. Do one more here, breathing in and breathing out to soften down. Hands coming to the top of the mat, making a pillow for the head. Forehead comes down. Next time that we breathe in, lifting the head with the hands and then exhaling down. Breathing in to lift, exhaling down. One more time here, breathing in and breathing out to soften down. And then we're going to bring left arm out at shoulder height. So I'm going to come up seated so you can see the angles that I'm talking about, but you're doing this on your stomach. So that left arm coming out at shoulder height, cactus arm, so bending the elbow, and then sliding that arm round to it's kind of about 10 to 2 or whatever that angle would be on a clock face. So we're onto the belly, hands slid around, right hand then comes out in front of us, and we're going to bend the knees and start to draw the knees in towards the chest as we lift the torso. Maybe the head stays down, maybe the head stays lifted, so just choose where feels right for you. This is a strong stretch across the front of the shoulder, so into the pectoral muscles here. And then when you're ready, legs slide out. We'll roll onto the other side. So do the same on the other side. So this time, right arm out at shoulder height, bending the elbow, and then sliding that right arm up. Then left hand comes out in front of the chest, and we bend the knees to the left side. So stretch across the right shoulder into the right pectoral muscles. One more breath here. And then releasing all the way back. Hands under the shoulders, pressing back up and coming into child's pose. So options to have the knees together or the knees wide. Doesn't matter what shape that happens to be. Forehead towards the ground. But if it doesn't reach the ground, we can make a pillow for the head with the hands. Or we can start to press fingertips away. So pressing fingertips into the ground. Notice how that movement travels up into the underarms and into the sides of the ribs. And then we can start to bring the hands all the way back to find the feet at the back of the mat. So we start to release the shoulder blades. So from here, head onto the ground, or if we need support, we can either use our book or a cushion underneath the head if it doesn't reach to the ground. Feel the shoulder blades sliding away from one another as we breathe in fully into the back of the body and exhaling to completely release. Breathing in fully and exhaling, completely letting go of the breath. And then hands coming under the shoulders, pressing up into seated. Bringing the knees out in front, finding comfortable seated. So in yoga, we kind of have this idea that we have to sit like this. If we want to be kneeling or wonky legs, go for it. Just finding comfortable seating position. And we're going to bring the arms up and then dropping the left elbow down. Breathing in, up, right elbow comes down. So seeing if we can use the head to encourage that upper arm, the humerus, up towards the sky. Lovely. And then we can bring that next time that the right arm comes down, pausing there. Option to start to bring that right hand across the lower back. Or we can start to draw hands in opposite directions. So moving the left hand to the right, right hand to the left. Keeping it active. Again, using the head to encourage that upper arm towards the sky. Lovely. And then coming through to the other side. So hands interlace at the top. This time left elbow comes down, so the right arm's lifted. Maybe we stay here. Maybe we bring left arm across the lower back, or we can start to draw the arms through in opposite directions. Lovely. Reach, reach, reach. Using the head to encourage right arm up, and then gently releasing. So circling into the shoulders, maybe just shaking them out a little bit. And then we're going to roll down onto the back of the body. So finding, you might want to have some layers on here. We're going to pause in stillness once we've done some final movements into the body. And the body temperature does drop when we come to this point, when we come to stillness. So we can just lie down, or if you want to, again, explore that tilt into the pelvis, flattening the lower back, tucking the tailbone, and then rolling through one vertebra at a time. Easing all the way down. Lovely. And from here, we can bring the arms up above the head if we want to, arms out to the side. Traditionally, we would have the legs out straight, palms up towards the sky. But any discomfort in the shoulders, hands can come onto the belly. We can bend the knees and let them drop into the center if we want to. And close the eyes or soften the gaze and give the moment for the head to catch up with where the body's got to. Tuning into the breath, notice that natural ebb and flow. We're not trying to force the breath, not trying to control it, just allowing it to happen. And then scanning the whole way along the body. As we come into contact with different parts of the body, we can invite them to soften and release. So the crown of the head, the forehead, the eyebrows, all of the tiny little muscles around the eyes, release. The cheeks are soft, the jaw released. The tongue is soft in the mouth. The throat relaxed. The shoulders easing into the floor, completely supported. Upper arms and elbows, lower arms and wrists, release and soften. Backs of the hands, palms of the hands and fingers, release. The whole of the back of the body, shoulder blades, ribs, mid-back, lower back, completely held by the earth. No need to be doing anything here. Hips are heavy, upper legs and knees, lower legs and ankles, release. Tops of the feet, soles of the feet and toes, soften. Everything completely held as you arrive in your Shavasana, your recovery, letting the body absorb everything that we've just done. And if you find that the mind starts to wander, then knowing that that is completely natural. Anytime that we notice it, we can gently guide the awareness back to the next in-breath and back to the next out-breath. That amazing ebb and flow, always there to return to. Slowly bringing movement back into the body, reconnecting the body with the mind and the mind with the body. Gently passing fingers over tips of the thumbs, moving into the hands, the wrists, the arms, into the toes, the feet, the ankles and the legs. And if it feels comfortable, then maybe bringing the hands all the way above the head, full body stretch from the tips of the fingers down into the toes. Keeping the eyes closed for a moment longer, rolling to lie on the side, maybe using the arm as a pillow. Using the hands to ease you back up into comfortable seated. And we close as we began, so rooting down into the sit bones, finding length across the back of the body, growing tall and long across the spine, breathing in fully into that space we've created. And exhaling, completely letting go of the breath.